Hello, my name is Hersh,
And I'm Quitty.
and this is the HERshyt Show. A little bit about it, and you're gonna laugh, you're gonna cry, you'll probably cuss at me, but that's all right. I just want to bring to you the realization of what's really going on in this world that a lot of people are afraid to speak on. Enjoy. Well, welcome to this week's The HERshyt Show, and we have a very special author with us today. Go ahead and introduce yourself, my dear.
Hello, my name is Zara Koshinsky Gillis, and I am the author of How to Be the CEO of Your Healthcare Team.
Yes. And where do you currently reside? Yes. And where can they get the book?
So if you are located in northern Maine, Aroostook County, there's several local vendors that you can purchase this at, and they'll be signed if you buy from them. So shout out to Herbert Rexall Pharmacy, as well as Neighborhood Books of Maine and Noise Flower Shop, Mars Hill Pharmacy. And I feel like I'm forgetting one other that I need to say that I'm going blank on, but they are all listed on my website. Brambleberry Market, sorry, that's the other one. So any of those, you can get a signed copy at them. Otherwise, you can get it online on Amazon, and it won't be signed, but if you run into me somewhere, I can sign it. If you are interested in a signed copy and you are somewhere else, if you email me at some point, we can arrange for that to happen as well, and I would mail it to you.
Okay. And what is that email address?
It is author.zara.gillis@gmail.com.
Okay. And what is you mentioned your website. I know I did take a look-see when you sent it to me, but what is your website?
It's Zara Koshinsky Gillis, all kind of run into one word, .wordpress.com.
Okay. And that will also be posted at the top of the show once it comes out as well. So all your links will be there as well. So if anybody wants to reach out to her, please make sure that you do. And again, if you do want a signed copy, because that is forever loving, a signed copy, you can reach out directly to her. Now, I did see, because a lot of people don't really know, like they're afraid to walk away from the doctor that they may have, right? People are kind of scared to do that or scared to speak up. What actually motivated you to write this book?
Wow. So I've been in that situation so many times, and what really motivated me to write the book was when I received a cancer diagnosis. And it was at the point where I had also had a lot of other things going on. And it was just one more thing added on that was so overwhelmingly stressful. And it was really tempting to just go with whatever, let it have the outcome that some of the other things had, which wasn't so great.
Yeah.
But where I was sitting with this diagnosis was already in a situation where I had suspected it was an issue. I had already gone through one surgery and reconstruction where they said, like, no, like it's not that. There's no way it's that. And so then 6 months later, they're like, oh, it is that. And like, we missed it this whole time. And not only did they miss it, but they argued with me. And then what ultimately happened was, because I ended up having a reconstruction a second time, there was less of my ear left for them to work with, where if it had just been caught all at the same time, it would have been a better outcome.
Yeah.
And at that point, I didn't know, was this it, or had it spread elsewhere?
Yeah.
I was waiting for results and had heard nothing. And then I called and they're like, and then, they didn't get back to me. And then a day later, they called me while I was at work and just said, you you have this diagnosis. And I had tried to like excuse myself to another room where I could take the call in private. And I was just really like devastated. And then the way they handled the follow-up was very cold and not understanding. When I finally determined that I couldn't go on with this particular provider.
Yeah.
Because I still wasn't getting answers on, well, when would things proceed?
Yeah. This is your life that they're playing with. So, yeah.
Right. So that's when, I made the decision to fire the provider. And that was really the first time that I viewed it as like a firing.
Yeah.
I had an undergraduate degree in business many, many years prior, but I had just started my master's degree in business administration at the same time that this happened. And so I was reading, rereading a whole lot of those, basics like structure of an organization. And I kept thinking, like, there's so many parallels here. I can let this run my life, or I can be the CEO of my health. Like, I could choose to walk away from this doctor. Nobody else can fire them for me.
Yeah.
Unless I was in a position where someone was, in charge of making health decisions for me.
Yeah.
In that situation. But, I couldn't, I'm not a subject matter expert in healthcare. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
But CEOs are almost never the subject matter expert in whatever they oversee. Even if they started out as that, you could say at one point that Mark Zuckerberg may have been the subject matter expert in all things Facebook when it was, him and his buddies coming up with this idea in college.
Mm-hmm.
But Facebook is so huge now that there's no way he's the expert in all the different legal things and the coding and how everything works. So
it's a team. Yeah.
Right. And so it's the same with your health. Yes, you're not the expert in how all these systems work in your body. And you're not necessarily the expert in knowing whether someone's telling you 100% the facts or the truth. But it's your job to pick that team, to work with that team. And when that's not working, to ultimately decide that they're not going to be a part of your team anymore. And so initially, the idea wasn't so much to do a book as it was to start thinking of my own healthcare that way.
Yes.
And then as I started kind of putting that into practice and trying to just organize my stuff or my shit.
Yeah, your shit. Y'all heard it.
Then it was really like, okay, it was very empowering. It was very empowering to really see the concept come together and see that, okay, like, yes, I have the choice to select a primary care provider. I have the choice to select, a dermatologist or an oncologist or, an OBGYN or anybody. And just because one of them has been recommended doesn't mean that I can't just walk away and choose someone else.
Yeah.
And part of that was really hard for me to understand too, because I really, at the point where you receive a diagnosis like that, you really think that like, you're just going to be led to the next room. Yeah. And if you watch TV, it's just like, oh my God, the C words dropped. And then like everything happens so fast. And they just get taken to where they need to go. And the next provider they need to see shows up and just everything happens. But in reality, I would say maybe that's some people's reality, depending on what their diagnosis is. But for most, and for people that I've interacted with and various support groups and people I've known that have had many other types of cancer, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And to
you have to shop around. You have to shop around for something that's for you. because not every doctor, there are some doctors out there that are really just for a check. Sadly.
I don't want to slander, anyone or imply that, they're just maybe out to like commit malpractice, although certainly there are providers that do.
Yeah.
And you have to be aware of that. I unrelated to this, I ended up finding a provider out that I had seen, and things just really were like off and red flags. And I ended up finding out that they had been disciplined. And the reason they couldn't even answer or do some of what I was asking was because like they were prohibited from doing that part of the work anymore.
Because of previous instances.
Right, because of, the agreement and other things. So they could practice like more limited, but, some of this stuff, just like CEOs, they don't go in, they come out of business school or they didn't go to business school. They just come out of the hard knocks of life. They start up this business, which is how most businesses are started up. Most people that run a business don't have a business education. But they get thrown into it and you're figuring out new stuff every day. But I think the most important part of being a CEO and viewing yourself as a CEO is that you're in control at the end of the day. You can accept those services, you can reject those services. And the extent to which you can do that, I think some people very much are unaware of that. They feel like if they get a referral to such and such doctor, that's who they have to go to.
Because we're supposed to be able to trust medical providers who advise us to go to another medical, because it's crazy nowadays. It's like your provider is really stuck in this bubble. So you have to go to a specialist for whatever your need is for, oncology or, dermatology or the bone doctor, orthopedic surgeon. Like there's so many different types now. Their hands really are tied. So you are supposed to trust your doctor to tell you to go to that doctor. So yeah, and a lot of people are afraid. They're afraid because it's so, getting that diagnosis that you got, that's life-changing. Like you said, that is very much life-changing. When you say cancer is, what do you mean? Like, wait a minute, and it's stressful. It causes anxiousness. It causes, because as soon as you hear cancer, it's like, oh my God, my life is over. Not necessarily, but not everybody is built the same. So if you can't trust who is you're going to discuss these matters, and then when you change doctors, you have to repeat everything all over again. So I am all for shopping around for your provider. And that's what's in your book. When did you start the book?
So I started the book roughly like 2016-ish. Okay. As I was kind of going through that, I would just like throw like, random notes. And then I worked on it for a while. And then I got to points where I just, first of all, I have a full-time job that actually pays my bills. So I couldn't neglect my children or my spouse or my financial, things that were going on. So there was that combined with all this other stuff. So it was really more like I would have these spurts of like, okay, let me put some stuff down and then kind of just file it away. And then, once I got to a point where with myself, I had kind of lived with this process a while and like worked with it and started to see results from it.
Yeah.
That's where I got more serious about, like, I put together a schedule of like, okay, I need to do this, this, and this, and this to get it published.
Okay. Did you self-publish or did you go through somebody else?
So I originally tried to go through someone else and got rejected numerous times, and then ended up self-publishing through Amazon.
Okay.
And I really, Amazon gets a bad rap in some ways, but I can say that their publishing service for authors is a huge support to small business and just, small authors, because without that, there's so much literature and things that would never see the public's eye. So,
yeah. And you just gave a lot of relief to a lot of starting authors out there just by that statement that you just said, because a lot of people are afraid. Well, before I go any further, may I ask, are you in remission? Are you good to go? Or
so I've had no evidence of anything since the surgery to the last surgery. I've had a few questionable things come back other places where they've removed and either decided that was good or they want to monitor. But I'm almost 7 years without a cancer diagnosis. So that's,
hey, where's my kettlebell at? I usually have a little kettlebell so I can ding it. That is awesome. That is such great news. But yes, most definitely, y'all need to check out her book. And I am purchasing mine. I do have the link. Like, we literally just met, y'all. Like, this was this was a, hey, how are you doing? I do interviews, and she was blessing the platform by reaching out and saying, hey, I would like to come on. So thank you so much for coming. And I am totally excited about reading the book, because I know personally of people that are afraid to change, either for monetary reasons, because of course insurance is a whole different topic. But people don't have the money or the means, so they get with whatever doctors they can, or they think that they're getting with a doctor with whatever they can, not knowing that they can really be the CEO, like you said, of their life, and shop around to the best of their ability, even if you have to travel. I've seen some people actually do the traveling part too. So yes, ma'am.
I ended up doing the traveling because I went and for that specific diagnosis, I ended up doing far more in-depth research than I might for just another provider that is more casual, like picking an optometrist when I move. Not saying that optometrist isn't important, but it's the ramifications. If they get my eyeglasses wrong, I can go to someone else, or I can go back and tell them to fix it. That it's not as specialized. It's not as critical per se.
Yeah.
Especially when there's already been mistakes like that. And I would say the thing that was the most beneficial really to be able to quote unquote shop around or go see another provider. And what I would tell anybody is get a copy of, at a minimum, like a pathology report, or the report of your x-ray, the report of your CT scan, the report of your, ultrasound, whatever that test was. Get the report of it, because even if they don't have the rest of the records, or even if the other provider is stalling on getting those, most of the time that's something you can either get, from your MyChart or whatever electronic platform there is, or, you can go in and demand a copy of that. And there's more than once that I have gone in and physically stood at the desk and demanded a copy of my records. And, I always try to do it in the most professional way possible. Obviously, CEOs, they build relationships within the business community, and you are, you should act professionally in that extent. Well, you want to be respected, but you also should show respect.
Listen, I call myself a professional asshole all the time. There's levels to it, but you can't go in there and be nasty and think that they're going to. I had bilateral Achilles surgery right before COVID hit, and it got to a point to where they were not responding to me when I had to take a break from school. So now the school is charging me because I had to take it wasn't even the break during that time. Like I didn't do like the last 2 week portion. But I was I was a PhD candidate at the time, right? So all I was doing was my research. There was no more classes. We just had to stay up and address, weekly turn-ins and this, and that, and the third. And because the doctor did not send in my records to the school wanted to charge me. So I literally had to go but it was during COVID, trying to get a copy of your records. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. Please get a copy of your medical records as soon as anything is done, because for not only giving to another provider, but for your job, for if you're going to go to possibly get Social Security disability one day, if it gets to that point, you have to have medical records. Or if not, you're going to find yourself in a nasty situation where people are like, we don't know. We don't know where it's at. Oops, the system went down. Or you have to pay $20 a copy. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and I ended up shelving the book, for a number of reasons. It was finished for a while. I shelved it. Part of it was COVID, part of it was like to the emotional fatigue of just dealing with the topic and then thinking, well, maybe this worked for me, but it's not really something that, is going to help someone else. Or, while I had written it to be generic to, anyone, it's not a long book. It's designed to be something that you can kind of pick up. It's got some worksheets in it where you can visualize like who your providers are currently. Are they meeting your needs? What might you think that you want to consider if they're not meeting your needs that you would want to look for in a future provider? And then, how do you show appreciation to providers that you currently have that are doing a good job?
Have you thought about putting a workshop together?
Well, I have advertised those on my website, but so far I've had no takers, but I certainly would be excited to do that with, a group of folks, because it really is a very personal thing to just kind of get your stuff together. And it's not that I would want to, see in detail, any of that or anything. It's more of just facilitating you really coming to that, place yourself. But, I had doubts about that. I was like, well, maybe this is just not, but then I ended up just being thrown into these different scenarios where then I would have to do this all over again. Or I would have people that would come to me, with maybe similar issue that they, were ignoring or just thought, well, they'll get back to me or whatever. And so, I ended up having someone that had a situation that was, almost too similar to mine, where it was just, they were getting, kind of pushed off down the line. It was like, oh, well, I don't know if I have the referral, maybe, whatever. And I was just like, you like really, really need to advocate for yourself. And, they ended up, they got the care they need. And it, really would have been a huge difference for them. And I thought, this is really, really something that folks need. And if the methods I've come up with maybe don't, maybe the notebook you decide at the end, that's really not your thing, but the methods and the things you can do, even just to take what you want from the buffet, if you will, if at the end of the day, you can come out of it viewing yourself as the CEO of this whole mess, that's the most important thing. And I've talked to so many people where the first thing, they say is, well, I'm not the CEO. I'm not a CEO. I'm not qualified for that. So they're initially like thinking, like this is for CEOs. No, like this is for you.
It's your body. You are the CEO.
Right. It is your life. It is your health care. And if you don't, I really hope everything just magically works out for you and nothing catastrophic happens. I'm sure maybe there's people out there that's their experience, but I would love to say this would be my last, but I've had so many experiences over and over and over again. And when you are consistently in the percentage where it's like, oh, only 1% of people will ever get this, or, oh, only 5% of people will ever get this. If you're that person, you probably are finding yourself in this position a lot more often, because that's just been the experience. I started making a list one day.
Specialists out there, like even with my niece has a rare thing that they found. I think she was about 4 or 5 years old, and it's called HLH. There's only 5 specialists in the United States. And when they initially started, they were like, oh, she's got RSV. Oh, no, she's got pneumonia. Oh, no, she's got the flu. And then they had to end up medevacing her out of the area that she was in to another hospital. And then she ended up finally coming to Atlanta to the St. Joseph Hospital, because luckily Georgia had one of the 5 specialists for HLH. It is a very rare thing. And, now she's 8 years old and she's blossoming, but now she actually has that specialist because nobody could figure it out. And her being 4 or 5 years old, it was a lot. So as an adult, as a child, you can pick her up and move her and take her wherever you need to take her. But as an adult, we're adulting, like you said, between work and everything else. But you do still have to take the time out and put your foot down and say, you know what? And I'm a veteran. I'm retired from the Army, right? Veterans go through it. I see it all the time where they refer us or they tell us community care, right? So the VA has we have that appointment, but that's 6 months out, right? But most of the providers that work at the VA, it's very rare to have somebody that's been there for a whole career. They usually come in, beef up their resume. I worked with veterans, and they find another location. They follow the money, which I get. I'm not knocking it at all. But then we have to start over with a new provider. So a lot of veterans give up. So your book is actually more for than just civilians or for, personnel that have had that unfortunate C word told to them. It's everybody, including veterans. So yes, I think that your book needs to go worldwide because, not really. Yes, worldwide, but everybody, we're pretty much the only country that's strongly monetizing the medical field. So, but we're not going to bash. We think we love you, doctors, but some of y'all need to get right, right? But I do want to introduce you. I'm going to send you some information. I went to a workshop that is actually for authors to turn their book into a workshop. So I want to introduce you to somebody else as well that's based in here in Atlanta. And okay. Your book definitely needs to go out because people do need to understand that they are the CEO. You are the say so. Don't be afraid to say, hey, guy, I don't feel right. I think I'm going to find somebody. You don't even have to tell them. Just go find somebody. It's not like a job. You don't have to put in a 2-week notice. Just find somebody else. Right. But was your insurance company involved with that? Or how did did they get confused? What is your, I don't even know how to ask the question, but was your insurance company helpful with you when it came down to finding somebody different?
The only thing they were helpful with is I did find that their website had its own provider directory where people could comment on the quality providers. So instead of it being out there on Google Health Grades, there's a lot of different, sites out there where people comment on providers, but this was where only members of the insurance could comment on it.
Okay.
And so sometimes the responses were a little bit more candid.
Don't go to them. No,
well, it's interesting because if you're picking a cancer, oncologist, for example, you're really not just picking one, you're picking a team, similar to if you're going to an OBGYN, you can have, the greatest one you think if you're delivering a baby and the one that you want to see all the time. and you might like most of the rest on their team, but there's always going to be that one on the team that you're like, I hope I never have to see them. And, sometimes you have no choice but to see them. So, but I mean, what I found at least was in this particular case, it was helpful identifying who that was on the team. So I was like, well, okay, it's only one. Like the rest of them had like rave reviews. I mean, it was like, wonderful. And in this particular case, I even researched their academic backgrounds, what they had published in terms of being current in the field, and their understanding of the latest approaches and different things. So, like I said, I went a lot more into depth with this one, but I also knew, who to avoid. And I will say that person came in a few times and it was spot on. It was like,
yeah, no. I'm gonna need you to leave. Thank you. I don't need to see you. No.
And it was, but I guess it helped, because you're already emotional in that state. So then having somebody that really is that like really sandpaper, not nice person can make it even worse. But at least it didn't catch me completely by surprise. It was like, well, I can't say I was surprised that she talked to me that way or that he talked to me that way. No, in terms of like finding a provider, I didn't know. No, I like, it's hard enough just to call their number and like get to somebody that, for a question about a bill. That wasn't something that wasn't a source that I was willing to explore. I certainly explored their provider directory, which was very helpful. And those comments, but that is just the scenario it was. I thought you brought up two really great points that I would like to kind of highlight further. First of all, thank you for your service.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And yes, I agree that this is for veterans. I actually did a blog post a while back about specific resources that are for veterans, that are different from maybe others. So that's the thing, is the book is generic. You could apply it literally to anyone. Yep. But then on my blog, what I like to do is take, a particular condition or a particular type of provider or a particular type of population and say, okay, here's some more resources for this condition or that population, to really kind of keep the conversation of how you can be the CEO growing and more relatable to a specific population. But if I tried to do that in the book, it could be an encyclopedia, because there's just so many conditions. And the other thing you brought up was for children. And I think what's really important is, if you are the parent or guardian or custodian of a child, this is you for them. You are the CEO, and you're teaching them to be the CEO someday. Yep. And if you find yourself in that situation where you have a very limited number of providers, you're not always going to be able to just go to the quote unquote Walmart and pick one of thousands of options. Yeah. And if this doesn't work, pick another one. There are lots of situations where you're going to be stuck with a limited, options to pick from. Yeah. And CEOs run into this all the time as well in different business scenarios. They might only have 3 or 4 suppliers that can get them a particular part, or that can have the specialized knowledge to do something. It's not necessarily about being the CEO just means you have unlimited choices. It's, well, how are you going to approach those limited choices? And if you really are stuck with only one choice, then sometimes that means you really need to buckle down and get even more into your research, more willing to advocate and challenge. And you might need help with this. You don't have to be super, rocket scientist or, again, an expert in medical things, but bring other people into the conversation. Just like there are companies that have a board of directors, they have that's a huge source for them to get that different input where they can go, okay, I hadn't thought of that. So maybe you have someone in your family that is a doctor that can give you some, feedback on maybe certain medical research you could go read, or maybe if you can't understand what that article is, they can try to explain it to you in terms that are not, highly specialized.
Yeah. Bring it down to English, to layman's terms, because some of them words, Lord Jesus. But you definitely want to find the specialty for you, and Google is a mug, and it's at the palm of your hand. Like, take your few minutes, scream, cry, do whatever you need to do. Take your 5 minutes, and then really hone in on not giving up. Don't give up. I always say stagnant water stinks, right? So if you get complacent with your own self, you're like sitting water. And once you become stagnant water, it starts to grow shit. And we don't want to grow nothing. We're trying to get rid of whatever is growing, right? So I am a firm believer in that. And I don't think that we met by accident, right? I really don't think we met by accident, because I had a stroke at 21 years old. I had a stroke at 21. I was paralyzed on the right side of my body, and the civilian hospital that they took me to released me saying that I had a migraine headache after they took my pregnancy test. Oh, it's just a migraine. And this is while I was in the military. I happened to be on a 4-day break for Thanksgiving around that time frame in 2001. And when we got back down, luckily I didn't drive myself, right? So when we got back down to base, because I wouldn't have made it, I wouldn't have made it. We got back down to base, and I started feeling like, how your foot falls asleep? Yeah. I could feel the circulation starting, but it was from head to toe, the prickly, it was like the circulation was trying to open back up so I could almost walk, but it felt real heavy on the right side. So that following Monday, when we got back, I wobbled down to the clinic that was literally like 3 doors down from where I was at. I get down there and I walk in, and this doctor just yells, "Stroke!" And I'm turning around like, who the fuck is she talking about, right? I'm 21. I'm just in here because I'm tingling, right? I don't know what's going on. But she ends up, and I thank God for her to this day, she ends up getting me because the base that I was on did not have an MRI capabilities, right? So yes, it was ridiculous. So they get me down to another location, to a civilian hospital. I had to wait a week to get the results. It's back in 2001. I get a phone call while I'm at work, so they put me on this profile thing. Anybody that's been in the military, they put you on like a dead man profile, right? You don't have to do PT or nothing like that. They had me on blood thinners, right? And then I get a phone call that Friday and was like, "You need to come to the hospital. You're being medevaced by helicopter to another location." I was like, "What the fuck? Wait, what?" I didn't know what was going on, right? So then they end up putting the wrong person on the helicopter. So they threw me in the back of an ambulance, and I have to ride like 2 hours in the back of an ambulance, just bump. I don't know what's going on. It was ridiculous. For a week straight, they would come in there and tell me, "Well, you can't eat because you're going to maybe have surgery." They did an angiogram, and they found where the block was at in the left thalamus area. And I'm awake during the whole time, right? And you see the dye go in, and then it stops, and then it starts trickling. And he was like, "Well, it's like the main highway shutting down and your veins are overworking." And I was like, "Yeah, but what are we going to do about it?" Like, you can tell me this all day long, but what are we going to do about it? And then like after a week, they kept coming in and out, in and out, in and out. And he was like, "You know what? At this point, you're too young to put a plate in your head. We're just going to tell you, take medication and pray." I got up and weeble wobbled. It took me about an hour, but I got out of that hospital. I was like, I'm ready to go home. I was done. Take medication and pray was pretty much the answer. And it took me about a year to walk right again. I could tell when I'm not 100%. I'm 43 now, but back then being in the military, it was crazy. It was right before the Iraq war started. So it was just, I mean, it was 9/11 happened right before I had the stroke. So it was just a lot going on at the time. And we just came back from Bosnia. So they still, to this day, have no idea what happened to me. To this day, I'm 43. And whenever I tell my new doctor, hey, I had a stroke at 21, I'm like a little guinea pig in a lab. Like they're all excited. And I'm like, no. But I have cut therapists off before because I ended up being their therapist. When I walk in, they kick off their shoes, and put their like, give me your pay since I'm here to help you. But yes, I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with you to be the CEO of your life in your medical. If you are uncomfortable, you don't have to stay with that doctor. And I'm glad that you wrote this book. I have never seen many books like this. I haven't. And I'm not an avid reader, don't get me wrong, but I do a lot of research. And I have not really seen a walking testimony. Yeah, there's people that have put how-to books together and never went through shit in their life, but you are literally a walking testimony. You are telling your side on what you've actually been through. And I admire that wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And I do want to introduce you into to another individual, and she is absolutely amazing. But she can hone in and get you into a point of turning your book into that workshop that you want to do. Because you are not just one, your niche is about being the CEO of your life, right? And of your medical care. That's your niche. But you can touch so many different members of the community. It's not just a tunnel vision of one type. And I like that. I like that a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, indeed. Now, have you fired any doctors lately?
I have. Actually, one of the recent firings was one that I had to be a little more vocal on. I, was having difficulty getting basically documentation transferred. And it was, technically I didn't even need the referral, but they were insisting that I needed it, and they didn't want to give certain documentation. And ultimately, I ended up having to go in person and request it because they refused to send it on the phone. I asked them to send it to the other provider. They refused. They said they couldn't do that. I said, fine, and I went in person. And I asked for, I said, I want a copy of my records, and I specified exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, we can't give that to you because we know you're just going to give it to so-and-so. And I said, and I was just, I mean,
I would have had to catch myself. That's the moment I would have been like, bitch, look. Like, no.
Well, I looked over and there was someone else in the waiting room. And so I just elevated my voice a little bit. And I said, so are you telling me that I can't get a copy of my records? And, then it got a little bit quiet. And then she was like, well, let me go talk to my manager, and so then I stood there for, a few minutes and let it be uncomfortable. And then about 5 minutes later, they came out with the documentation I asked for, and they handed it to me, and they said, well, we're really not supposed to give you this, but, here you go.
That sounds like a lawsuit, because you're not going to tell me I cannot get my own records. Understandably, to send it to somebody else, you have to do the release of information because of the Release of Information Act, right, for good reason. But if it is not a HIPAA violation, if I'm asking you to send it to my new doctor, you're just pissed because I fired you, right? So yeah, but you did right with the other person, because people are nosy. They're going to listen in on the conversation. So with you elevating just a little bit, because you look like a sweetheart. You don't look like a Karen, you don't look like, somebody that's going to cause trouble. You're a sweetheart. So they assumed that they had somebody that they could just, oh, we could just tell them no and they'll walk away. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. So I applaud you for that.
So, yeah. And then, that's exactly what I did. I turned around and handed those records off, and it made for, a smooth transition, because, the issue with this particular type of care that I was facing was a delay in care. It needed to be continuous in this case. And so by them delaying the release of that too long, then it would have meant that I would have missed the next, needed appointment to stay on the same frequency. And so, again, I'm not advocating, being a quote unquote Karen, or, again, professional, but sometimes you have to put your foot down, and
Yep.
you have to decide, you're not going to get the information you need any other way. And so, and I had to make a decision at that point too, because it was a smaller area. There were less of those types of providers. So at the point that I made that decision, I pretty much knew that I was firing them for any future need as well, that may come up in the future. And ultimately, again, it wasn't a decision that I took lightly. I would say, obviously you don't want to fly off the handle, and just like a good CEO is not going to fly off the handle and fire somebody for one thing, unless it's.
You don't want to create that toxic environment as a CEO. You don't,
right.
You don't want, because regardless, medical providers are speaking. That's a small community. So, you have to be cautious. I get that, but be a professional asshole. And if it's your medical records, go get them. Right? Go get them. Or call Hersh. I can be your advocate, But a lot of healthcare locations do have social services on ground as well, especially hospitals. So you're not alone in that battle in most locations. But if it's just a walk-in, privately owned location, you're not. The social worker is going to be the doctor or the nurse or the spouse that's working there doing paperwork.
Yeah.
So yeah, especially North Maine is not a large area. So yeah. How are y'all, off topic? I'm sorry, but you're close to the Canadian border, and I just thought about the forest fire, or the fire that's going on up there. Is your air quality okay right now?
The air quality here is not, has not been affected. We've actually had a lot of rain in this recently, so it's really not been, I was actually just up in Canada this weekend, because it's literally like a stone throw, away, and outside doing some hiking, and it was absolutely beautiful. The park I was at had banned campfires for, maybe obvious reasons at that point, but but
Yeah,
no, there was no. Yeah, no, it was absolutely beautiful. There was no,
I know that was my squirrel moment. I'm telling you, I get off topic a lot, but when you said North Maine, I was like, wait a minute. Because, as the show that you just saw about emergency preparedness and then your health scares, it dawned on me all at once. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah.
But definitely, y'all need to go ahead and repeat your website, but spell it out for them, please.
Sure. Zara, Zara Koshinsky, Koshinsky, Gillis, Gillis .wordpress.com.
Okay, because nobody was going to be able to spell that name, I promise you. But we will have the link up. And then
yes. And you can find me on Facebook, author_Zara.
Yep, author_Zara. That's how I found her. And go promote her, man. Please just go follow her page and her blog. I will start jumping on the blog randomly, because that's what I do. That's what the HERshyt Show does. We love to get information out there, especially when it is amazing information and somebody that has lived through it. You know what I mean? And you're continuously living through it. This isn't something that it was an overnight thing, right? So you're not speaking from, let me go Google a topic and write on. you literally are continuously living this, and with your children, I'm quite sure since you've went through it, you're probably a stickler on there. Like you pay more attention to what's going on with them as well, right?
Right. And my husband actually is very, very much that way as well. He's actually helped me to be more like that. He's found examples where, he was prescribed something and it interacted with another thing that he was prescribed, or the same thing with the kids. He's always been very much go in and make sure that, people complain about going to a lawyer and how much you pay per hour, but you don't really see how much you pay per hour unless you self-pay for health insurance or you have a high deductible. But, they're getting paid a lot of money for you to be there. Make sure that you are prepared to go in and get the most out of that time. Have questions. Have done your research beforehand to the extent you can. If they recommend one treatment, but that there's another one, especially if it's less invasive, ask why that one is not an option, or why they don't recommend, something else that maybe is half the cost, or, there's so much. And I will say, at the point where I kind of had to make the decision to really live this way, I'd also come to terms with the fact that so much that I experienced before I got to that point, and some of what I was experiencing in my health at that point and before, was because I hadn't advocated for myself.
Yeah.
I ended up having extensive surgery for something that could have been fixed with physical therapy had it not gone on for 10 years. But I learned as a child in the foster care system that my voice really couldn't be heard in the medical setting. I spoke up, but when it was immediately shut down, and I'm not saying that I didn't have a good foster parent or, but it's just, when you come into that situation and you already been raised to not feel that you're worth anything, that your voice doesn't matter, you've been abused, you've been through all these things. And then when you get shut down by the medical profession and repeatedly people tell you that's not happening, that's not what happened, it went
that
on.
Can stir up old trauma.
Right. So it just went on to the point where, okay, well, eventually they couldn't deny that it happened, because then the consequence was I ended up in the emergency room. And then they tried to do, we'll try physical therapy after this has been happening for 10 years. Well, it didn't work by that point.
Yeah.
Been so much damage that had been done.
And the way that the medical professional is, like, even before I had my Achilles, the bilateral Achilles surgery, they had to, because it was a new provider that I was going to, they had to start over with the same test. Like, you can't go based off of somebody else's information. Yeah, it's good to have, but they was like, nope, we got to try this. We got to try this. The insurance company said we got to try this, and then this, and then this, and then we can actually have the surgery. Like, all else has to fail before you can actually get what you really need to have. And that pissed me all the way off. But yeah, so I can understand. And then, like you said, the way that you were raised, that can trigger old traumas. You go back into that shell, somebody that you fought to get out of those ways, and to be able to bet, I'm an adult, damn it, I can speak, But when they are continuously telling you, no, it's all in your mind, or no, we need to try this, because they're supposed to be the smart people. They're the medical providers, not everybody is a know-all, do-all. So yeah, I'm glad that you got enough, I call them the backbone, right? You didn't just become the jawbone and just come home and complain to your husband or to your therapist or to, whoever, saying that, oh, woe is me type. You stood up, you straightened your backbone. You was like, listen, damn it, this is my life. This is what's going to happen. And, while you were doing that, not many people take those notes down. Not many. There's so many people going through you, similar, because not everybody goes through the same exact thing, but similar situations. And it doesn't even have to be cancer. It could be something like, with my feet are bad, finding the podiatrist that needs to be found, right? Or your kid is consistently having that raspy cough that is always coming back, but nobody's ever tested the kid for bronchitis, or any type of asthma, maybe change their diet. It could be something as minute as that, but if you're continuously drawing it out, like you said, and you've written in your book, you do have to be the CEO of your life. It's not one person says, I'll do all, and that's it.
Right.
Especially if you're paying for it, damn it.
Yeah. And I mean, just like if you bring somebody in to do the roof on your house, right? You pick them to come do the roof. Now you don't necessarily get to pick who they bring with them, so when you pick a provider, you don't necessarily get to pick everybody else in their office. So you have to, your decision, it's not easy decisions, just like CEOs don't have easy decisions. There might be, one particular provider, or maybe the scheduling is an issue, or maybe something else is an issue, and you have to decide, well, is this the reason I'm going to drop this provider, or do I need to address that particular issue? And I would say, don't be afraid to reach out and address issues like that. I ended up, I really was torn with firing a provider for some administrative stuff, because really I couldn't get the care because the scheduling was such a mess. And ultimately I picked up a business card. I always pick up business cards whenever you go into the doctor's offices, they have the business cards. Pick up the business card for your provider, any provider that you're interested in, and the practice manager. Because when things don't go right, especially on the administrative side, that's somebody that you can talk to, that you can say, hey, you know what, look, I really don't have a problem with this provider. Things are, really great. However, this is what, this has been what's happened with scheduling over the course of such and such and such. And, obviously everyone makes mistakes, so you have to allow some grace. The healthcare profession has been through a lot with COVID, but there comes a point where you have to decide, is it worth trying to repair the situation? Have you done everything you can to repair the situation? Have you reached out and expressed that? Because you're also potentially saving a lot of other people from experiencing that same issue. Maybe they'll address the scheduling. Maybe they need to do some training with their front office people, or maybe they do need to fire that person that's the scheduler, but they don't have enough written documentation of complaints where they can actually take that action. So, not that I advocate just being out to fire people, but sometimes you have to help people find where they can succeed if they're not succeeding where they're at.
Exactly. Hey, what they say, on the spot training, right? Because as any professional, right, if you own a business, you don't want the nasty people sitting up front with their, when I say nasty, I mean attitude, and then that ruins your company, right? That ruins your brand. That is the same within the medical field. If I go in and you're being nasty to me, first thing I'm gonna say is y'all need to check her. When I get in there with my, I'm not gonna get loud and alley in the, in the front unless I have to. But once, because I don't talk low anyway, right? I'm a Southern girl. We talk loud regardless, right? So when I get to the back, when I get with the nurse in there, and I say, "Hey, man, y'all might want to, y'all might want to talk to that person in the front, because they might be having a bad day today, but she might get the right one that comes in here, or whoever's working the front desk." So, and they don't have to have medical degrees to be an administrative assistant. They typically hire, people that with the high school diploma or whatever. So they don't have really anything but customer service experience, so, it just takes a little talking to. That's all. You don't go out there getting people fired. Don't do that. Don't let's not do that, right? But some people do have to be tactfully relocated and talked to sometimes. And You can ask for the patient's rights pamphlets, right? Because every state,
Absolutely.
there's laws, and they
Yes.
are technically supposed to give you that patient's rights when you go to sign in. I,
Yes.
I've seen some locations, they don't give them out. They'll say, and it'll be on there, did you get a copy? And you be like, sure, yeah, because you don't want to wait. But you need to request it. If there's not a copy to give you, you definitely need a request for that, because that is your rights. And you can also Google it. You can go Google your state medical rights and, speak to them again. Like you said, there's directors, there's board of directors. So you can actually put in a complaint with them, but closed mouth don't get fed. Your way of what you're doing right now is saving a lot of people, right? Because we don't need people in certain medical positions that aren't doing what they're supposed to do, right?
Right.
Don't be there just to collect a paycheck, because I promise you, me and Arthur Gillis are coming for you. we're coming for you. We're snitching, doggone it, and I'll put them on blast. I don't care. We'll do that. But do your research, most definitely. Definitely got to do your research. Are you going to possibly make a part 2 to this book?
So I'm not working on a part 2. I did do a revision just based on some feedback from the first version, because this was my first book that I actually published. From the time I was maybe like 12, I've just had so many ideas for books that just kind of like, whoop, and then you forget it, and it's like, I really should do that. And this was the first one I made myself do it with. But I am working on two other books. And I am trying to find time to work on those, because I think this one really, it's kind of everything, the basics that you need. I do like the blog to kind of take it into some practical applications and to engage with my audience on that, and try to again help people see maybe the need for this methodology.
Yeah.
But my next books are probably, my next one, I'm hopefully it's going to be done in 2024, but right now I'm really behind on my timeline to be able to do that, but hopefully I can make up some time, hoping 2024 and 2027 for the next 2. The next book is on how to teach your children how to vote.
Oh, yes. Because this seems like a whole generation then got away from voting. And don't just vote for the party, vote for the person.
Yeah.
That's a whole, we could have that discussion all day, even though I don't like politics, but I love voting. So I volunteer to work at the local voting locations as well. I don't care who you vote for, as long as you vote. Right. So that is going to be an awesome book as well. Yes.
It's a very much a critical part of sustaining a democracy. And I really feel it is the only way that we can continue to sustain a democracy for our children and for our children's children.
Mm-hmm.
The rights that don't get exercised get taken away.
Yep. And
in
we
every society over time.
And we're seeing it. We're seeing it unfold right before us right now. And our generation is, I think our generation, because we're in between the boomer and these new millennials and zennials and whatever else they're called these days, like Generation X, like we're the last ones that use the pay phones. We got into the internet, we got into, and everything is, we were that fold over, but we also got away from a lot of what still needs to be done. So I'm in agreement of that. I will be waiting on that book to come out. I might even read it live one day. You never know. But we really are. And a lot of people have said, well, my vote don't count. So yes, it like, guy, if you don't vote, it don't count.
Yeah. So I read the 1619 Project, and there's a chapter in there on voting. And one of the things that really, stuck with me is, if you don't think that your vote matters, look at how much they've tried to suppress it for every single type. If your vote doesn't matter, they wouldn't have tried in all these cases over time to eliminate the vote of women, the vote of Native Americans, the vote of Blacks, the vote of people that didn't own property, the vote of people that were poor, the vote of people that couldn't read, just on and on and on. If your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't focus on that. There would not be so much focus on it.
Yep.
And I think that's what's so unfortunate, is that people can be convinced that their vote doesn't matter.
And even if you are a convict, even after a certain amount of years, you can go. So people need to look up their laws. They need to look up their local laws. So yeah, we could tell that's a whole different another hour for us. I promise you, we could go into that. We will be having another interview if you just would love to honor us again, because we would love to have you again. But yes, that's a now my mind went wandering off in left field somewhere. So yeah, that's you are doing amazing. What's the other book? You said you're writing two.
I am writing two. The other one is actually a book on poetry, and it's exploring different experiences in my life. So I didn't really just want to write an autobiography, partially because the experiences in life I've had, a lot of times I can't put them in a timeline.
Yeah.
Because I don't know when they happen. Time is a hostage. And so time inhibits me from being able to tell that story. And so this is poetry more. It's, a poem related to a topic or an experience or a feeling. And just, it can transcend time. But telling, the impact of that or how that unfolds, it's much more freeing to be able to do. And so I've been writing that. That one's very hard to just say, I'm going to sit down and write it, because you really have to feel it as well. And so it has somewhat been very much therapeutic.
It's also that cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what I was just about to say, CBT, because when you are putting it out there and you're reliving it, that is the cognitive behavioral therapy, where you're getting it out, and you feel yourself. You have to go back through those emotions for a minute, but you're also feeling the weight lifted off your shoulder because you're finally being able to tell somebody about it. Right? Because when you grow up in trauma, and we could talk about that offline, but when you grow up in trauma, which I think a lot of the greats had some type of trauma in their life, right? Those that are shining through. But yeah, look into the CBT aspect, research that a little bit, because I've been through it. And I actually got up and walked out. I was like, nope, not doing it. Y'all kiss my ass. Like, I'm good at compartmentalizing. I'm good, right? But certain triggers, it also helps you understand yourself a little bit better, when you start speaking about it. And when certain things happen, you'd be like, you know what, that did remind me of XYZ. So poetry is, we're still reading, from Langston Hughes to Robert Frost to, poetry is timeless. You can go back through it and nobody's going to really know the exact moment, but they're going to know what you felt. And I admire that, because you can help so many people that have been through it themselves, especially through experience. Yes, ma'am. I know we could.
And look, I don't want it all. I don't want it all to be negative either. I want it to be kind of so, but that is just it though. You have to be in a place safe enough to feel, to be able for the words to really convey the feeling, after the hiking accident that I was in 2021, I wrote a poem, and the poem described what it was like to be in that point, from the time that the accident happened to the point that I got to the hospital. And it was and I remember almost all of it. And there was like an 1.5 hour rescue operation. And to describe that to someone, or even just to read the news articles, which weren't really all very accurate, but
Oh, of course not.
But like, you know, there, or people would say, well, what happened? You know, and I could either just go straight factual, but I felt like it really didn't like convey like, well, what was it like? You know, and I ended up, so I wrote this poem, and I did, you know, kind of put it out there, but it was amazing to me because I could better really articulate and feel what happened. But I also felt like, and had multiple people say like, wow, I really felt like I was there with you.
Oh.
Like I really felt like they could, you know, better understand like what I went through. And it didn't need all the gory details. It didn't need you know, any of that. It was just a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's kind of what I hope that people can get from it, is you know, either that they can somehow connect with it if they relate to that experience, or that they can view that situation maybe with more empathy, understanding what someone else may have went through in a certain situation like that, instead of just reading the words, you know, so and so fell off a mountain, you know, like, what does that mean?
Like, how? Wait, what?
You know,
Yeah.
Well, right. Or like, you know, certain things with foster care, or certain things with, you know, adoption, like those, with those particular experiences, like how do you connect the experience with the emotion to convey something that you can't read in a textbook, that you can't read in a news article?
Birth.
Yeah. Giving birth. Yeah. Yeah. You know, just any of those, you know, again, experiences, like I don't want to just sit there and try to write, you know, like, well, on this day, such and, you know, like, it's just that's
The clouds were gray and there was soot coming from the left. I don't know where it was coming from. Yeah, I get it. So you actually convey in poetry your feelings, that moment, minusing all the gory details, but still giving that vivid surrealness to what you experienced. Because right now, I really just want to put a bubble around you because you've been through a lot. Let's not have any more incidents, okay? You and my co-host, I promise we're going to have to put bubbles around y'all and feed you 3 times a day, because stop hurting yourself. Oh my goodness, but we are actually a little over an hour right now, my dear. And I could talk to you forever, but I think my producer might be mad at me after I send it to Mario, we love you. That's my producer. Mario, we love you. arobinsons.tv is the platform. But one more time, your Facebook, do you have an Instagram?
I do have an Instagram. Yes.
Okay, so Facebook, Instagram, blog or website, and Amazon. Go.
Oh, I'm supposed to say them all?
Yes.
Oh.
Oh, geez. Okay, Facebook, go.
Facebook, author_Zara.
Okay, Instagram, go.
That's one I'm struggling with right now. I'm like, wait, what is that? Oh, I'm trying to find. Look, this is embarrassing.
It's not embarrassing. It's real life. We're unscripted on the HERshyt Show. It's real life. We like to catch people in their natural habitats, not anything false, fake, or phony.
Look, my natural habitat can be very distracting.
That's okay. That is okay. You are a perfect fit for the HERshyt Show. As she looks up her Instagram, let's go for the blog, the website.
The blog, yeah. So the blog's name is Coffee Time, and the website that it's on is Zara Koshinsky Gillis .wordpress.com.
And that will be posted because y'all are not going to be able to spell it unless you rewind this here video. And and she's going to get up her IG. But while she does that, go ahead and
step away to get my IG because it's on another device.
Oh no, you're fine. We'll get the IG afterwards. Just know it'll be in the link. And show that lovely book one more time for us, please, ma'am.
Sure.
And it says How to Be the CEO of Your Self Healthcare Team. Self ain't in there, but your healthcare team. Know when to, what did Kenny Rogers say? Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away. You're betting with your life if you stick with a raggedy ass provider. I'm just going to put that out there. Don't bet with your life the way that you would not bet with your money. So there's 3 things I go by, author Zara or author Gillis: your pockets, your freedom, and your sanity. Those 3 things. Your pockets, your freedom, and your sanity. If somebody or anything is playing with those 3 things, you need to cut them off. And like she said, you don't have to be nasty about it. You could be nice, nasty, or you could be a professional asshole, or whatever you need to do. But do you have any last words, my dear?
I would just say, don't be afraid. Be the CEO of your health. And no matter what doubts that are coming up, it's never easy, but advocate for yourself. Don't ever stop advocating for yourself. And
Yes.
And if you are to a point where you can't do that, you're too emotionally overwhelmed, get someone to fill in, in an executive assistant role, in a board of directors role, in a supportive role, a therapist, multiple people that you can surround yourself with that can help you. There are some diagnoses where you may be to the point where you're like, you know what, I can't deal with this. I had my sister come in and she took notes during one of the meetings. We had come up with questions in advance, but she took down the notes because as hard as I tried to listen, it was just all swirling around. But that help that she provided at that time was so beneficial, because then I could go back and read the notes later and come up with more, questions and things. But being the CEO isn't about doing it alone, but it's about making sure that you acknowledge ultimate responsibility. You are in charge of the outcomes. You make the decisions. And ultimately, that's your decision to do it alone or to pick folks that can help you. And so make sure that you're, having those people that you can go to when needed, and that don't be afraid to fire a provider. And don't think that you are not qualified to be the CEO of your health, because you absolutely are.
But they say, let that shit go. Get rid of them.
Cheers.
Yep. Cheers. Yes, indeed. Look at my little unicorn. It has been an absolute honor. We will have another interview in the near future. Whenever you want to come on the HERshyt Show, you are more than welcome. We don't have to do this recording session. We can go live and talk shit. And just remind people to be the CEO of your healthcare, right? And yeah, we're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen. But I will be sending you some information, my dear, as soon as we get off this here thing. But I am going to press the stop recording after I say, thank you for watching the HERshyt Show with author Zara. Y'all, please make sure you go to her Amazon or to her online website. Facebook, go follow, go like. It costs $0 to follow and share, right? $0, right? But I also advise you strongly to get the book. It's not a 4,000 page novel. It is something short, sweet, to the point, something that she has lived through. It is her testimony. She didn't write no bullshit. She didn't go Google something and put it on paper. This is all about her giving you what she's already been through and how she handled her own personal situation. But she also gives you worksheets and a space to be able to write down the information as well. Right. And if you ever have any questions, just reach out to her. Right. But we are going to get the Instagram up and we're going to post it. So never mind none of that part. Mind your business. Right. Because we can't remember everything. You know, we're getting a little up there in age. Right. But it has been an honor. Thank y'all for watching the HERshyt Show. And I am going to stop recording right now.
Be sure to log on to youtube.com and subscribe to the HERshyt Show at TheRshytShow.